Noel, thanks for coming on this professional discussion. Chuffed to kind of grab you. We don't talk enough, do we?
No, we don't. We don't. But it's yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to jump on with you.
Yeah, it's mega. I've got to say happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. What a great present this is for me. What a great present. I appreciate it.
Oh, brilliant. No, it's yeah, so as we were chatting before, like these are just like conversations around coaching young people and all those sort of things. So I wonder if it'd be good, like, just to open up with like your bit of your background, where you are today, where you sit within coaching, and what kind of your academic interests are. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Tom. Yeah, so my name is Noel Dempsey, and I think before any of those roles and titles, I've got the amazing title of being a dad to two crazy kids. So if we're getting on to coaching and kids, and I think a lot of my stuff has been learned since having the two little cherubs, which is one word for them. Also, I'm a partner and stuff, so we learn through kind of just being in close proximity with another. My current role is that I'm a senior lecturer at the University Campus of Football Business. That's based in the Manchester campus, and that's very kind of football orientated degrees: football coaching management, football coaching talent development. My current role in coaching is that I coach football for my sins, and I've coached football. I worked it out last night that this is actually my 20th season of coaching football. Yeah, that's how old I am. And my role is that I'm currently at Manchester City within what is their selects provision, and that's effectively their internal development centre. And I've got the under 12s this year. I've been at City. This is the 7th season that I've been at Man City as well. Previous roles I've held in academy football. I've also worked for the English Football Association as a tutor on what was back then their level 1, their level 2 in the UCFB license, and I've also been a kind of coach mentor for them as well. My academic interests, I think probably my main line of research is more around coach education policy, ideas around kind of curricular design, how we really kind of give some form of power or agency back to learners within their education process. And then more broadly within kind of coaching, it's how we use coaching basically as a kind of vehicle to do good. And I guess my ultimate mantra on that is that we develop the person to develop the player. So that kind of personal process, and I'm not always successful in it, it has to be said, to try and help them become better little human beings. And I say little, a lot of my under 12s are the same size as me, but yeah, that would kind of be my main gauge on it as well.
That's brilliant. That's really interesting. I really like the way you forefront of your role as a parent, partner.
That is a big role.
Yeah, definitely the biggest roles. Yeah, definitely. And so how did you get into sport then? Is that how's it come to be a really important part of your life? You're teaching it, you're working in it outside, I see some of your posts that you take your children to, you're testing them out in different sports and coaching environments. So how did you get into sport?
Yeah, I think probably how I grew up, probably at a time in an era where, my dad specifically kicked me out the house and said, go and play. I'm very fortunate to be in and around kind of East London where I grew up, and have a great set of mates that, we had our backpacks and we had our boots and ball in the back, and we played on the streets, we played in the parks, and we got home just as the lights were kind of coming on when it was dark, and beyond that sometimes. So very, very privileged upbringing from a sport perspective. We were also at a school that probably wasn't the best academically, but very, very sport centric because of the nature of learners that we were. So, put my hand to everything, football, basketball, athletics. None of these, by the way, I was very good at, but I loved playing them. It has to be said that I was very fortunate probably to be around a group of friends that were, some of them outstanding in their sports and across a range of sports. I was probably, middle of the pack, but always tried your best. And tried to kind of contribute where I could. So very, very privileged, and I think that carried me all the way through my kind of degree, which I actually did in sport and exercise science. Within that, I actually found my love then for psychology, and I actually did my master's in sport and exercise psychology many, many years ago. And throughout university, kind of played university sports. Again, a range from football, basketball, running. I actually played table tennis, quite competitively as well. And I was just fortunate that I was afforded the opportunity to always be around clubs and people, and now I'm so incredibly privileged to have a career both academically and in coaching, that it's in an area that I love doing. And I guess one of the reasons why I'm probably so passionate about it is that it's served me so much. It's provided me with so many wonderful opportunities to travel and to be part of kind of full-time work within sport. Obviously now full-time work within academia. These are really, really privileged opportunities that sport as more broadly has afforded me. So I try and kind of give that understanding back to others, and not everyone will have the same backgrounds and opportunities and stuff, but it's been wonderful to just, when you reflect back, to go, wow, we used to play in the park for 8-9 hours a day, to now kind of trying to inform and support players and coaches to help little players as well. It's amazing. It's really, really wonderful.
Yeah, brilliant, Noel. Really nicely put. And similar, I'm a touch older than you, but yeah, my background's similar. It's backpacks, bikes. The caretaker who lived on the school site, he would leave the gate open, and he knew what he was doing, just to let people on the end of the field at the top to go and play. And you did it off your own back, and your bikes were the goalposts, and
I think
great time.
Related to that one, actually, and there's a key fundamental in that one, is that in my school we used to have a wonderful PE teacher who, getting us to go to class on time in the mornings was difficult, we'll say. But every morning there was basketball training. All of us would be there between 7:15 and 7:30.
Yeah, you're there.
Every morning we are there. So yeah, it's funny the power that sport and, I guess, camaraderie and relationship building is, in terms of, like I say, he left the changing room doors open that you could access from the start. He was the one that opened the gate that allowed us to walk in. And on those days, like when you used to go back into your tutor class at the beginning, the tutors were like, basketball training this morning. Like, yeah, that's why we're here on time. So again, it's amazing what it can do from the very beginning, and what it kind of instills in you as a person, as a human being. So yeah, it just clicked to me.
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah. And I guess and it is like a natural conversation. I'll jump off things you talk about as well in this, but what sometimes see, and I'm interested in so our background is like often a lot of your play and experiences of sport become initially probably very self-driven. You want to be with your friends on a field, in a park, in a court, wherever it is. And what I've seen throughout my coaching, I've got children now, and they're sort of 11 and 14, and there's less and less opportunity for that self-driven play, engagement, falling in love, learning. And often I see sometimes, and again, this is across my experience of like coaching, which is less than your 20 years, but sport's often done to them at the moment. And they are having topics delivered to them, and they are driven to this sport that is delivered to them. And then they go home. And actually, I fear for that self-driven aspect a little bit. And I don't know whether you see that or have a view on that.
Yeah, it's a wonderful point, and a very poignant point at the moment, isn't it? And I think it's a societal thing as well. We're heavily mandated to formalize children's learning very, very early.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's necessarily always through ill intention, but yeah, my daughter is going to be 8 next month, and my son is kind of 10. And although my son is now going to school kind of by himself, he's knocking on for his mates and things like that. I remember by his age, I was already out. I was already out and about, and on buses and stuff like that. Now, whether that's partly societally because out of fear, because of the changes in how we view parenting and how we view sport as a whole, I just think this overly formalized system has a massive kind of contributing factor to that. That even within my space, you know, in professional clubs, and you know, they're starting at 4 or 5 years old. It's formalized. You're in 2 or 3 times a week. So where the actual love is to just go down the park or knock on, and nobody knocks on anymore because of technology, and but even to message, it's not really there. And I don't say this, you know, really blasé as a oh, it's a criticism there. It's horrendous because it's evolution to a point, but
Yeah.
I just wonder how we can maybe, as human beings, and I'm talking maybe just as us as dads in this instance, Tom, of do we have to kind of push them out the door like my dad did, and I'm sure how your mum and dad did? You know, do you just have to just go and knock on, and if you come back in 45 minutes, you've had no luck, fine, but maybe you kind of need to do it, and you know, there's always that element of kind of yeah, worry and fear because they're your kids and stuff like that, but it is a space now where I can see kids being burnt out by 10 because they're they're just put into a system that they're not even sure what it is. You know, because for a lot of them, like in my sport, it's just football for them, and they probably don't realize that they're being formalized. They don't probably realize that they've almost been indoctrinated. And again, I don't say that lightly, and I don't say that purely as a negative. But you know, when you talk to kids who are 10 years old and they tell you that they spent half their life in a system, that worries me a little bit. It does worry me. And I say that, you know, I'm part of that system to a degree, not as much as what I was. And there's kind of personal and professional reasons for that. But yeah, I think we just lose that essence of how, maybe in my example, how I grew up with the love of the game, like you say, that intrinsic development of understanding life skills, of understanding sports skills. You know, where do we begin to not, I guess, just put them in as we experience them? Maybe how do we substitute some of the formalized stuff to give them that intrinsicness to be around and play? And it's really hard. That's not an easy fix by any stretch of the imagination, because it stretches across social, cultural, economic, you know, drivers that all have an influence in this stuff. So yeah, really difficult. I'm not even sure I answered any of that one, Tom.
No, you did, and it's a fabulous like area to sort of dive down, isn't it? And I think the point you just made towards the end there around like where can these, because these formalized systems, and we need to balance it up. Like they're great. We have like better coaches now, better understanding of the game, better understanding of children, you know, better understanding to offer provision. But that can also come at a cost of like, where is the sort of playful elements? Where are the intrinsic? And where can we then weave that back in? When can those systems kind of support that weaving back in of those sort of things? And like you say, there's no easy like model or framework to do that. And how do you balance that up is a tough ask for those systems.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I go to is, and as you said, there's some wonderful things that happen with, you know, the perception that there are better coaches, that they're more well equipped, they understand learning. I think my one against that is, when do the kids get an opportunity to learn about themselves while they're by themselves or while they're with their mates? Because how they behave around an adult is often very different to how they might hang around with their mates. You know, certainly as we did, we were incredibly misbehaved, but you learn very quickly. All right, we probably, you know, got a clip round the ear, or we used to get chased by the neighbour's dog. But it's like that they were things that it taught you lessons very, very quickly about what you can do and what you can't do. And that really had none of us as parents involved in any of that stuff. It was, learn by doing type things. So I just wonder where the kids get that opportunity to learn about themselves if they're always around others that are meant to be informing them. Like, where do they get the opportunity to inform themselves?
Yeah, and I think again, going back to parents, we're part of the process. We know where they are.
Yeah,
we know what they've spent, and I'm sure I've certainly done it. What have you just spent £7 at the shop for? Or whatever, you know, and they're always being surveilled, I find, young children, young people now. In many, many ways, and that's even just when they're supposed to be out playing. We're naturally surveilling them.
Yeah.
On top of, if you're in a Cat 1 academy, they're looking at your GPS data or whatever it is. They're always under watch. Whereas like when we were children, we weren't
No.
for hours on end.
Yeah, and you know, I think they're really, really important moments, and not all of them will be positive, by the way. You know, if you come home crying because you got beaten up, or you come home crying because you've fallen over and you've got a massive gash on your, you know, I think that sometimes we not necessarily muddy cuddle, but there is such a protective element, probably more so now. And that wasn't to say that, you know, parents that weren't back then, but it was a case of, yeah, it's okay to. I always say to my kids, it's okay to be bored. Like you're okay.
Yeah,
You're not in any danger. Oh, I'm bored. I'm like, I don't know how you can possibly be bored. You know, you live in a house that is filled with toys, and you have a TV if you wanted it, and you've got untold amount of board games in the cupboard. Like, crack on, you're okay. Whereas if I was to ever say that to my dad, I wouldn't even say that to my dad. I just create something. I do something.
yeah, definitely.
And I think it's where we give them that space to create, and maybe give them that space, and maybe in a non-judgmental way, that if they do mess up, it's not coming down on them, because they're used to being come down on, even in, you know, the systems. Is this is what you can improve, it's good, but this is what you can do better, and this is, and you're just like, sometimes maybe I'd love it if they just made a massive error and you go, it's okay, crack on.
Yeah,
You're
no
you're
worries,
all right. Yeah, you're okay. Thanks for letting me know.
And I wonder, like, you know, taking it back to coaching, I do think there's opportunities to do that within coaching sessions. You know, I saw some examples. It'd be great if you've got, and like I've seen loads of examples of coaching sessions not necessarily been flipped to not be a topic that we are delivering to you. It's like, right, here's a problem. So how are we gonna how are we gonna go round a defensive four? Go off in little groups and just think of some ideas and come and show me.
Yeah.
Like I imagine that's how I could design a session to help with that exploration, that self-learning, and like they come back in 2 minutes. No, go and really have a little play around with that idea and come back and show me. Would be a way you can integrate that learning into a session. So I don't know if like you've developed any ways to try and help that playfulness, that learning, that putting the responsibility on them to have a little explore in a non-judgmental fashion.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think I'll be honest, in that non-judgmental fashion, I think it's incredibly hard. I think if I take my current context, you know, all of my players still play grassroots football. They are not signed to the academy.
Yeah.
But they're some really good players. You know, they could be in academy systems. We've lost many already to academy setups, and that's wonderful. That's part, I guess, of our remit, that we either get them in the elites in the academy setup at City, which is incredibly difficult to do, or they go on to other clubs. And I think it's kind of probably where we were going a little bit later, but there is a massive difference between what they experience in their grassroots setup compared to what they experience with us when they're training with us at the academy. And the main difference is that there is a need to perform, not necessarily a need to win, but there is a need to demonstrate that they are getting better, and they're evolving their game. And you know, there's numerous challenges with that, because you know, learning isn't linear, and the intention to learn is great, and they might kind of understand it, but then you've got the level of execution might not quite be there, whether it's a technical thing, whether it's based on they can't do a 30-yard diag just yet at under 12, whereas some can. And so there's all these different kind of mixes of abilities and challenges. But when we talk about development, it already puts them on what we call showcase time, that they've got to show. Now, I'm part of that. I'm massive in terms of standards and the space that they're at. They have to do that thing. How I've tried to combat that, and certainly not always successfully, is most academies will have a kind of playing philosophy. They will have structured sessions related to kind of different topics throughout a season. And the nature of our groups, we have quite a bit of change, not necessarily with the nucleus of players, but certainly around the peripheries. Players will kind of come and go. Is for the under 12s, I've set out 4 core principles for the whole season. So we will learn more broadly 4 main principles. It isn't necessarily principles of the game, but just principles. So principle 1 is this idea of effort. So it's, how do we develop you to be horrible little animals? Principle 2 is, how do you learn to play forward? And that's kind of been the back end of our last 6 or 7 weeks, where the only thing we've worked on in different ways with differences is how do we get you to play forward. The understanding within that is that we want to give them that time to explore over a number of sessions, over a number of weeks, so that we can then make a judgment on where we think they're at with that, as opposed to this week we're going to do playing forward, playing through midfield, playing from the back, and then next week we're going to do something else. We don't have them enough to do that stuff, plus we know that the change. So, and we also understand that not everyone's going to go into the City way of playing, because they won't always be in at City. There might be at other clubs. So we discussed this as a group, and we're very fortunate at the club to have a wonderful kind of lead for the selects and a wonderful operations lead who provide that agency as coaches for us to explore the needs of the learners, try and give them some core kind of understandings of what it means to be at City, but know that the vast majority of them won't be in there. So by opening up space and time is really important for the players. As a coach, it can be incredibly frustrating, because you're like, we're into week 3 of doing this, and this, and you're still making these errors, and you're still doing this, and you have to kind of bite your lip, because you're like, no, you've decided that you're going to give them this amount of time, and even at the end, they're not going to be amazing at it, but they hopefully would have got a little bit better. And I think I take that probably from my own work around kind of sometimes less is more. I've said to them, I'd rather you be better at 2 or 3 things at the end of this season than us try and go through 20. Because in the longevity of however long they choose to play, hopefully they can just get better at certain things that make them the player that they are. We're not trying to turn them into robots. We're not trying to make them the same as everybody else. Just whatever qualities you have, let's try and bring them out, and let's give you the space and time to kind of do that.
Yeah, and that's like erring on like a super strengths approach. What are you good at? How can we identify what you're good at? How can we help you with that?
Yeah, it's a great way of putting it. 100%.
And then the other alignment that I was just as you were talking, then I think some of the life skills literature will be like realistic. If you're a coach, 1 to 2 things to really go after and I'm talking probably a life skills perspective, but I can see that from a coaching perspective, like you've only got so much time and space, and people have only got so much capacity to develop. Why go after 20? You might nudge them on that much, but if you went after 3 or 2, you can nudge them on that much.
I mean, probably the only one within that life skills element is probably we base it around hard work, and that's, we try and sell it as, yes, you got to work hard for yourself, but you've also got to work hard for your mate, because you're going to make a mistake and you'd want your mate to back you up and support you and go and chase the ball for you, the same way that if your mate lost it, you turn around and you go and chase that ball for your mate. So it's getting that idea of hard work, but then getting it hard work for others as well as yourself. So trying to understand that the game is bigger than themselves, which is probably the biggest challenge that we've got at the moment, is that, you come from a foundation phase of coaching where you've been encouraged, and, players have been encouraged for the last kind of 10, 15 years now to master the ball, stay on the ball, develop kind of technical ability to protect the ball, go and win the ball back in 1v1s or kind of 1v2s or 2v2s. But they now play 9v9 at grassroots. They play 11v11 with us. The game is bigger than themselves, and that's a really hard, probably, habit to break. And it's not necessarily that they're now doing things wrong; it's that they've now got to evolve their game. And I've tried to kind of, I'm old and grumpy, Tom. But I've tried to kind of apply the kind of computer game analogy that, when your PS5 or your Xbox kind of goes through that download and that updates, as you just got to show updates.
It was a Mega Drive for me.
Oh yeah, Sega Mega Drive for me as well. But it was one of those things, wasn't it, where it's almost that leveling up. I guess it's the Amy Price stuff. Is how do they level up?
But it sort of fits nicely, I think, because I was looking at us, because you coach 12s, and it's like it sort of fits nicely with developmental aspects. If you are 8, 9, you're going to be looking in yourself. You're not really concerned about the other people with you. And so it kind of the curriculum around staying on the ball, 1v1s, in my mind kind of fits, but like I say, the update, the upgrade, the game's too big to do that. If you're putting 12s in 11 aside, the game's too big. It's not possible, is it?
No.
But then the ability, the recognition from you guys to be like, okay, well, the game's changing, you're changing, you're updating, which is a great analogy.
Yeah.
We've got to be different now because it is different.
Yeah.
And I think that's really nice. That
it's a nice space because, and I've been very fortunate to be given the 12s for the last kind of few years, and I find it a wonderful group because they've gone from being the big fish in their primary school, socially, to them being the baby fishes in the bigger pond now, and they're all kind of finding their way. And I was laughing and joking last week with the coaches that you can even see the difference between when they started in September for them as little people and how they're now breaking up for kind of Christmas period. They look a little bit more mature. They look a little bit more kind of assured about themselves. They're developing what we call that little swagger. Like they've got something about them now, and because they've settled, and that's kind of settling in school, and they're finding their way again. What does home now look like based on their relationships that they develop in school, and they bring that to the football. They naturally will. So it's been nice to kind of see them. And I guess the line of questioning has very much been, go on, how's school? How are you finding it? Have you found all your classrooms? Who's got a girlfriend? Who's got a boyfriend? And they come in and laugh and joke and go, oh, this player's kissed a girl. And you're like, oh no. It's all downhill from there now. It's all downhill. And it's just connecting with them at that level that they then start coming to you and start going, yeah, listen, I love that you're updating in school. I love that you're getting better. I love that you're kind of a bit more assured, a bit more confident, and let's bring that into training a little bit, whilst having to really, be demanding of them in our space. And when we are very demanding of them, and there's high expectations. So it's always that complexity of balancing, wanting them to be happy children, knowing that they're growing up, versus the, come on, let's make you happy in this game, but you got some work to do now, which is really, really, it's fulfilling, but it's really tough. It's really challenging.
But it is tough and challenging. But I think like two things that I picked up from there is like really appreciate like your efforts and wants to have a holistic understanding of them. So understanding that school is a major transition at that point.
Yeah.
My son's that age. He's in year 7. My youngest is, so he's now getting on the bus and all this sort of stuff. But they're also, I think, young enough to be able to enact or try to enact what a coach says with very little pushback. So if you've got 14, 15-year-olds, that's potentially a little bit different.
Of course, yeah.
Where these 12s are in a really nice spot because you're still the coach. They'll help and try and do whatever you ask, and they'll give it a go without what is to come in later adolescence.
Yeah.
So I think you're in a really nice spot with them, and you can use that growth from other aspects into your coaching.
It's a great way of putting it. 100%. And then I'm sure, like you say, the older adolescents, I've again been very lucky and fortunate to coach them, and it's always evolving in terms of society, but it's probably more of a selling and convincing the older lot, whereas in this one you can go, come on, we can still go and explore. What can you show me? Like, can we show me what you can do, and I can help and guide you from there. You need to have a listen at this point, whereas the older ones is very much, listen, I love this, but I'm going to sell this to you now, and you need to try and kind of take what I'm trying to give you, knowing full well that they might just look at you and go, not today.
There's a bit more crafting the argument, isn't there, with older groups, which is fine.
100%.
I don't want to portray adolescents as bad. They're great.
They're wonderful.
They are great. So then just maybe moving on slightly, one of the things that you said, which was really prominent to me, is you said like we do try and develop the person, which helps to develop the player. I wonder if you could expand on some of those ideas of what you're trying to develop. So you've talked about effortful, which I think is a really, we can take that in different ways to be selfless to help your mate. So what are some of the things you do that around developing people which you feel works, is successful, you're comfortable with? What do you try and do in that space?
I mean, one of the biggest things, and I know it's really common practice now in kind of academy systems, and has been, even back when I was involved in the system, that when I came into to City with the select, one of the things I wanted is to engage the parents a little bit more and have kind of meetings a couple times a season, which didn't happen.
Right.
And what I brought in was that the first meeting that I had with the parents wasn't a performance review. It was a tell me about your son.
Nice. Yeah, really good.
And that kind of was accompanied by a kind of a 3 form or 1 form in particular, where I just created a really basic template in Word. And I basically said, what's your name? How old are you? What's the name of your mum and dad? Why is your mum and dad so awesome? Do you have any siblings? How old are they? I asked a question of, other than PE, what are your 2 favorite subjects in school and why? I asked a question of, if you had a day to do anything that you wanted, what would you do and why would you do it? And then I finished with the question of, now you're in the City Selects, why do you think you're here and what do you want out of your journey? And the expectation is that they will tell us sometimes, and I've tried to reiterate to the group that I don't want you to write things for the sake of pleasing me or the coaches that work with you. I just want to know a bit more about you. We then use that form to inform some of the conversations with parents, and you get to learn a little bit more of the nuance of the players. Who's in an established family unit, who's not, who's got single parents, or step parents, and what other sports do they do? We've got a player at the moment who does absolutely everything, who's a wonderful kind of cross-country runner, and you can just pick and feed little successes that they might have outside of our world of football and use them. More historically, there was a young lad who's now in the academy system who absolutely loved maths, like absolutely loved it, and we called him the mathematician, and that meant that in training, whatever score system was put in place with points, he'd be in charge of it, so he'd have an additional role. So he saw his value beyond the game, beyond the pitch, because he was so good at maths, and he was phenomenal for his age, far better than me. And we try to use that kind of combination of getting them to tell us a little bit about themselves beyond football, to get a little bit more nuance and context from the parents. And it's quite interesting that the parents always try to revert back to football because it's the space, and I don't typically ask, other than, go on, where does he play? Does he like it? What is his friends like in the game? Is he a captain, or is he quite quiet in that space? But it's never geared around, what's his position? What's the best thing about his football? Because that's for me to judge. So sometimes the parents can be a little bit taken aback by that. To go, oh wow, you're asking me about my son in terms of how he is, and I'm like, you need to give me everything. Like, give me the good, the bad, and the ugly. Don't tell me that he's a perfect child, because I'm not sure there's any such thing. And I'm quite open with them about, like, my kids. My son is not really sporty. He's played numerous sports and activities, but he gravitates towards guitar. And I tell them that. I'm like, does he play football because he truly loves football, or is this a case of you've just been taking him for years because? Whereas my daughter, she's an absolute tornado. Like, she just causes chaos wherever she goes, but she genuinely loves football at the moment. So I'm like, what child have you got?
Yeah.
And it's getting them to open up in terms of that to a degree, to what it is that they feel that they can and they want. And once you have that, you can get little things in place with the kids. I even surprised me that one of mine, who's incredibly quiet, is actually the new captain of his year 7 school team.
Right.
And I'm like, really? Like, it really surprised me. Really surprised me. And I was like, really? So I went up to him before training. I was like, come here. I said, are you skipper? And he went, yeah, I'm skipper. I said, mate, that's amazing. I said, well, you're going to have to be skipper here as well, then, ain't you? Like that. And I made him captain and stuff like that. And it's not massive at City, because, you go up and you shake the referee's hand at the start and this, that. But just that alone, you can build on, because I actually thought he was so quiet, quite timid, but actually that super strength or that confidence builder for him being made captain, I was like, right, let's add it into this context now for a little bit, and let's see how you do and how you get on. So those are the things that I try and incorporate. Other things like we do, I guess, more practically, I love doing like wrestling with the kids in terms of they wrestle each other. Certainly from a physical perspective, fundamental movement perspective, but also from a competitive kind of relationship building, camaraderie, team bonding thing. So we always have like champ of the week. We have kind of 3 rounds. We set the rules of basically pinning each other's shoulders down. but then we make sure you're not allowed to punch, bite, kiss, hug. But it's amazing how they start gravitating. So you build that team bondingness as well. So we try and do kind of loads of different things to just bring out different elements of who they are.
I think they're great. No, the wrestling one, it's also that confidence in contact, because it doesn't often happen with children of those ages. It probably might happen in PE.
Yeah.
It depends whether they've got siblings, but actually confidence in contact, I think, is a really, really important thing. Just so you're talking, that's really great. Getting that holistic and nuanced understanding of each person's sort of setup, if you like, and what they can bring. Do you ever get what I'm quite interested in is the parents, are they taken aback by your interest in their wider setup and who they are? Because I sometimes see some parents really just want some validation. Is he any good or not? What's your plans for him? Or her?
Yeah. I think, and again, I probably do this because I've developed the confidence over time to do this, because I don't think I would have done it at 18 when I started coaching. I don't think I would have done it even at 25 when I was coaching. But, I made clear that I wanted to kind of not necessarily always involve the parents, but have them involved, because they sacrifice so much. And parents in the main get a really bad rep. And, I'm definitely one of those parents at times when I reflect and I go, oh, I should have just said, well done. Why did I do that? So, we get that for most parents, or all parents, we'd hope that the intentions are pure and they are good. And the value that they bring in terms of just bringing them to training, 2-3 times a week, is a massive sacrifice. Half of them are bringing siblings, and they're having to run around for 2 or 3 hours with the siblings while, one of my boys, for example, gets to play. And that's a huge thing. So part of me is that I want to give back to the parents to say, look, thank you for that. And I want to show that appreciation by trying to get to know your son in this instance a little bit better. It also affords the opportunity, because I guess I come from a teaching background, is to show that there is commonality between home, school, and football.
Yeah.
They are not separate entities here. And one of the things that I do at the beginning of the season is I speak to all of the parents. So we get them in the auditorium. I get all the parents and guardians in there. No players. Players go and train with the other coaches. And I basically set out the stall of, if they misbehave at home, you tell me, because I will support you. If they misbehave in school, they don't come to training, because training is a privilege. And it's just to support some of those parents, because, kids can be kids, as I was, and I'm sure as you were, that we can kind of test the boundaries at times, if we put it that way. And I want them to feel supported, because they already sacrifice so much. And some of the kids are really aware of it and appreciative of it, but, understandably so, not all of them would be aware of some of those sacrifices. And it's not to push the sacrifice in the kid's face, but it's to make them more aware that you are part of more than just yourself. It comes back to this. And I kind of set the stall out for that, for parents to go, I want to get to know your son within the context, but I make it very clear that I understand that they are the center of their universe, but they are not the center of my universe, because I have a constellation of stars that they are, that I need to keep checking and challenging. And I'm like, so yes, I will validate good performances at certain times, but I will also tell them when they haven't been very good, because I need to make sure that different stars shine as bright as they can throughout the season. And if it ain't shining very bright in that moment, I'm going to tell you, because there's no point in me lying. There's no point in me telling you something, and then 6 weeks later we go, look, unfortunately, he's not been performing. He's in the bottom of the group. He's now got to go, which is part and parcel of our little mini system.
Yeah.
So the need to be honest with them starts by setting the standards, setting the expectation, but also saying to them, firstly, thank you. And secondly, how can we support within our context? Now, there's limits to that of what we can and can't do based on, EPPP and us being an extension of EPPP from a development center. But it is kind of then just demonstrating that transparency and openness with them whenever possible. There will always be parents that want validation, and I understand that. I don't deliver it unless it's warranted, because I don't believe that mollycoddling or effectively lying to that parent is going to do the child or the parent any favors. It's going to come back to bite me as a coach later down the line, probably. So honesty is best policy, without demeaning or absolutely hammering an 11, 12-year-old. There's no point in that. These are what we love about him. these are the things actually that over the last X amount of weeks we've actually not been great with, and that's down to him and that's down to us. So we need to find something. So this is his next step of where we want him to go. So we kind of put it in a very developmental space because that's where we're at.
Yeah. No,
So
really like some of those ideas. And then probably just to move it on a touch. So we've talked a lot about like development center selects, formalized systems that are selective. People that might watch this, and we've talked about it before. There's a whole world of grassroots, village football, Sunday league football, those kinds of things. How do you think some of these ideas that we've talked about from these formalized systems can sort of play out, and how well do you think coaches are equipped to do some of this really good work that you've said in your systems, and I really support the things you're saying? How much do you think they kind of can transfer down? How do you think coaches are empowered to offer some of these things, and how can we help that? Because I've, maybe you as well, I've been in and around the grassroots scene. Sometimes it's like war, and it's village 1 versus village 2 with under 8s, and you're like, feel like it probably should be like this sometimes. It's a bit of a different environment.
Yeah, to say the least. I mean, I've coached in grassroots football. I now have a daughter who plays grassroots football, and that's been probably one of the most interesting 6 to 8 months of my kind of parenting life. I love grassroots football, if we're going to football, but grassroots sport, because
I do massive.
It provides so much opportunity to develop love, affection, togetherness, relationships, develop skills, great. And it's meant to be for all. I'm massive on, regardless of whether you can kick a ball or can't, in foot, come and have a go, like come and have a great time. I get that there's always going to be pressures on that, no matter what level you're at, because there's an expectation culturally, and what we see on Sky Sports or TNT every single week, us as parents and coaches will have that kind of affiliation to, that's what I want my kind of under 5s to be, even though they can't kick a ball yet. So I understand that. I think the difficulty's been probably in the last decade is that we're beginning to see a merging of grassroots into development space to then development centers and academy, and it's just beginning to get the academy system isn't I don't think it's the system's fault. I think it's this gray area in between. It's beginning to overlap a lot of the grassroots space and make it hyper competitive when it doesn't need to be. It then creates that culture of war, and competition isn't necessarily bad, but the manner in which the competition is created, I think, gets a little bit excessive at times, because it forgets the essence of the care and the love for the sport and for the kids in those moments. And I think because it's now so well exposed with all these kind of private businesses that call themselves elites or call themselves academies, and again, I get the entrepreneurial side, but I think at times they can be really dangerous if they're not marketed with an honesty and an authenticity of what they truly are. And there's been plenty of kind of media around that on the social media platforms, and I don't think that needs reiterating. But I think from a coach's perspective, are they well equipped to deliver some of this stuff? In the main, no. I think there's pockets of clubs and areas and some coaches that are excellent at it. But as I said before, from my perspective, I don't think I would be able to hold a parents' meeting at 18 years old. So for these novice coaches that are coming in and learning, you've got to have a real big personality to be able to do that stuff. Yeah. Or you need to have support mechanisms in place from the club perspective, whether it's the chairman, the welfare us to go, no, part of our mandate is for every group. The parents get in, they go and train with the coach, and we tell them exactly how it is. So some might associate it as codes of conduct, but I think it moves beyond that. I think it is, why are we here? Why do we exist as a club? Why do we exist as a team? And if this is not for you, then you need to go somewhere else. And I think the importance of setting your stall out with the understanding of what grassroots football in our sport is and what it definitely isn't is really important. But I think that message is becoming a little bit more convoluted. I think it's becoming a grey area now where the performance is coming before the love, the expectation is coming before the learning, the demands are coming before the exploration. And that's just not
Yeah,
how kids learn, and it's not how I want them to learn. And little examples where, like, I help out, but I make sure I don't coach my daughter. I don't. I actively don't want to. We play in the garden and we play in the living room and stuff, but I just want to be her dad. I still make mistakes as a dad. I still, like, she turns and looks at me and I'm like that. I do all of that and I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
yeah.
So,
You
I'm
catch
not
yourself
school,
sometimes, don't you?
and this is why I'm open enough to say this, because it's hard. It's hard as parents and as coaches, but there's times where, even from a policy perspective, I've asked the question of, look, it's an all-girls team. 95% of the time they're playing against boys, which again, I've got no major issue with, but it's this one of these ones where you're like, can we make the pitch a little bit smaller? Because, like, the girls very rarely get over the halfway line. So can they see, if they see the goals a little bit closer, they might. And over half the time, the coaches are like, no. And you're like,
Yeah,
why? Why? Well, what's the problem? And in the first 30 seconds, you know why? Because they just kick the ball and the boys are a lot quicker in the main than the girl, and they just run past them. And then when it's 7-0 after 3 minutes, you're like,
yeah.
what's the
Well,
point? Did you
what's the
just want
reason?
to win? I don't understand. Like, they're under sevens or an under eights. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah,
But again, I'm coming, I guess, from a really critical and privileged position. But that also tells me that coaches aren't equipped to see beyond that moment of the game, to see actually how their players might need work in tighter areas, or their players might need to offer the girls opportunity to be able to get into the attacking half so they can work on defending. Do you know what I mean? And that requires relationship building, that requires communities of learning, and they're not easy. Do you know what I mean? That they're really incredibly difficult to do.
yeah.
So there's
I
always got to
think
be that appreciation.
yeah, yeah. And I think one of the things you sort of acknowledge there is you're right. A lot of the coaches are novice coaches. It's their
Yeah,
entry to football as well as the children's
yeah,
entry to
absolutely.
football. And maybe the one of the options is, maybe can we offer more support to grassroots about what it is? Can we make it clear as to what its function is? Can its function be redesigned to be that entry point? I've read somewhere, and I might be wrong here. I think clubs are going to be mandated to have a coach developer.
Yeah.
And I think that is a really good move if that happens. On an organisational structure of a club, I think that would be really good. I'm conscious of your time, and I'm conscious it's your birthday as well.
Yeah.
What what uh, and again, just to move it on into our sort of kind of rough area, like, what are you working on now? What is top of your agenda in sort of research, coaching? What are you on with? Yeah, I've seen your LinkedIn posts about sort of grassroots projects and research and things like that. Where
Yeah,
where are you
just
at now with these things?
yeah, no, I mean, and we spoke so much, haven't we, about the need to probably do some more research in grassroots, which, hopefully 2026 will bring about. Um, Myself and some colleagues have got a survey out at the moment around understanding exactly some of the stuff that we've spoken about. What are some of the challenges within grassroots football
Yeah,
coaching, from a kind of UK and Irish perspective? And I guess we've asked that question because we make a lot of assumptions, certainly academically and professionally, and we're aware of some of the core ones. Facilities. We want more space. We want them to be cheaper. We hate the rain. The weather's always a difficult one, but we're probably interested in, well, where do you dedicate your time to your practice? Where do you dedicate your time to your learning? What do you feel you're good at as coaches? But what are some of the fundamental challenges that you find in your coaching? Because we recognize that they are so varied and so nuanced. And there's not really been, certainly in football, and we've taken a very football centric perspective in this, because there's obviously been broader kind of studies that have undertaken multitude of sport, that have kind of offered some of the challenges that may be similar. But we really wanted to kind of explore coaches' insights of whether you've coached for one season, a 6 month, 7 month period, or if you've coached for 10 years. What do you find difficult? And with, like, society, challenges will evolve. They will look different to how they looked 10 years ago. And that's the core thing. I think we want to have that data to be able to set a foundation of how we can then support. A lot of my kind of research up to this point has always been within coach education. And the studies were very much focused around grassroots coach education. And I think, like you said, Tom, it's such a pivotal domain, it's such a pivotal context, and it is where coaches start their journey as well as players. So how can we best support them ultimately to give the kids, and it sounds, and I don't mean this in the way it sounds, but I don't care about the coaches, I care about the kids.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it means
it's their journey,
it,
isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah,
So it's very much the how can I now help you as a coach and support you and care about you to care about the kids. That's the way it goes in terms of, oh, I don't care about you. I love my coaches that I work with and support and stuff, but it is with the end user in mind, and the end user
yeah,
is
yeah.
always the little
Quite
person.
right.
And I think that's probably where, from a coach education perspective, kind of pose the idea of a different way of NGBs more broadly, and even HE institutions. How do we think about learning differently? How do we map both at the macro level a curricular design that affords kind of time, space, and knowledge, and we wrap that in this metaphor of the selection box, which, again, as I said, I was very lucky that it got accepted today. So that's a great birthday present as well. And I think going into 2026, it's probably building on that stuff of how ultimately how can we help? How can I help? How can we help as a collective? Because I think there is certainly still that theory to knowledge or theory to practice gap that I'm just as responsible for as the coaches are responsible for to develop themselves. So I'd like to think that 2026 will bring about further support for coaches. If I can contribute to that, great. So that would be kind of the bulk of, working out the challenges, what they need help with, how can we help? And
Yeah,
hopefully that's in collaboration with a range of great people like yourself, obviously like James and others as well. And if NGBs
yeah.
kind of
It's
can buy
it,
in, it's important.
it's really important work, and what we'll do if that's still open for data collection, we'll stick a link in and things like that,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
and those kind of things, because it's such vital work. So many people play the game; they need the
Yeah.
best possible experiences, and so many people are involved in it: parents, coaches, children. It's so important.
Yeah.
No, that's been like fascinating. I'm sure we could talk all morning
Absolutely.
about these sort of things, but it's really interesting just to get your insights into these really important topic areas. And thanks for giving up some time on your birthday as well for this. So
No, no,
that's
no,
been
it's been a privilege.
absolutely mega. And thank you.
No, thank you so
So
much. Well, thanks for articulating it much better than I probably have. So, and I appreciate the invite. And yeah, it's been amazing. It's nice to catch up.
that's all. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom.